What is going on, Queen City Reefers? So here we are at Bass Pro Shop, right? We are waiting on the infamous Dana Riddle. We're going to be discussing flow and how flow is one of the most important things here in the reef tank to mimic, what we try to do in our tanks to what happens in the oceans. So you definitely want to stay tuned. So if you are local to the Charlotte, North Carolina area, this club here is called RASOC, R-A-S-O-C. You definitely want to look into it. You definitely want to become a member. It is definitely very beneficial. You get to join these kind of club meetings like this, and then you get to participate in raffles or anything else that they got going on. Make sure you hit that like button, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and make sure you stay tuned for
I've been in the hobby now for about 35 years. So people here with less than 1 year experience, could you let me know? Less than 1 year? 1 year, okay. Less than 5? Okay. And 10, less than 10? Okay. Okay, over 10. Okay, so, all right. Yeah, like I say, that makes a difference on how I'm going to do the presentation. So, a couple of things. I've never done a talk of this nature. I've never done the same one twice. So, we've got 3 different elements that you should not treat separately. And now that I've said that, at first I'm going to treat them separately, and then at the end we're going to tie it all together, okay? So these do tend to be kind of technical. If you have any questions, let me know, holler at me, throw something at me. If you've got a question, somebody else probably does too. So as soon as the clicker gets here, we'll get started. We're going to talk about light, water flow, and alkalinity and how these play a part. Is anybody in here strictly an SPS keeper? No? Mixed tanks? Okay, so mostly mixed tanks. All right, this talk will tend to focus mostly on the stony SPS corals. I think this is the 5th presentation I've done in Charlotte, and it's always a pleasure to come up here. You've got a good group, and some groups, I call them assassins in the audience. Anything I say, they're going to get up and try to contradict me and make me look like an idiot, which is not too difficult, to be honest with you. Okay, I think we're finally ready. Obviously, the presentation is coral husbandry, holistic approach, and we'll discuss light, water flow, and alkalinity. And next. I had the pleasure or guts, whichever way you look at it, to move to Hawaii in 1999, and that arrow there points to the beach house I had. I was there for 18 years, had a coral reef about 200 feet in front of the house. And so I was able to scuba dive and snorkel and take a look at corals. And it's illegal to collect corals in Hawaii, but I was in pretty good terms with the coastal management person with NOAA there, so she could fax in the permits for me and get a response in just an hour or so. So all the corals you're going to see were legally collected. Next. And there was the view from my house from the upper Lanai. So I do miss it. Nowadays I'm looking at the garbage cans of my neighbors, and the views just can't quite compete. Next. Okay, as you know, there are many requirements for a successful reef aquarium, and light intensity, spectral quality, salinity, temperature, pH, water chemistry, water velocity. of those, we're going to talk about light intensity, the water chemistry, especially alkalinity, and water flow or velocity. Next. Okay, when you get, I'm sorry, Grace.
I have a question. I don't think maybe everybody knew what is CO, what does that mean?
It's calcium carbonate. That's the way the alkalinity is measured.
Oh, okay.
So when
DKH, different measurement for alkalinity.
right.
Okay.
It can be expressed as DKH or milligrams as calcium carbonate.
Okay.
So I don't use DKH. I can convert them. I just do it as milligrams per liter of calcium carbonate. Okay, sorry for the confusion there.
What's up. No.
Okay, when you get everything right, light flow, alkalinity, and micronutrients, this Venn diagram, everybody loves Venn diagrams, right? It shows photosynthesis and coloration. That's what's going to happen. Of course, everything else has to be right. If you don't get everything right, next, your corals will let you know.
Was that a next?
Next,
Okay.
yeah. And here's how they'll let you know. And as you can see, both those corals are sending me a little dislike there. Okay, instruments I used in these procedures. I've been collecting lab equipment for about the last 25 years. Here is a water velocity meter. This is a PAM fluorometer, which in layman's terms is a photosynthesis meter. This one is a chlorophyll meter, and you're probably familiar with this one. It's a quantum or PAR meter. And Debbie, I think the club has one. Is it one of the blue ones, or is it one of the
510?
It's a 510. Is that a
G510.
Is that a blue one? Okay. So it's that one is corrected for water measurements, so you don't have to do any conversions on it. All right, let's discuss water motion. Like I said, we'll tie all these three things together at the end of the presentation. Water motion, this is down the street from me when I lived in Kona, and it's difficult to tell, but this wave is 60 feet tall. And here, all the bubbles are acting as a protein skimmer. You can see this kind of a yellow-brown scum. It's way too dangerous to get in the water when it's like this. Who knows what the velocity is? Next. Did we skip one? Oh, no, okay, all right. Okay, a couple of things to mention. Waves can focus light and also act as a prism. And as you can see here, you've got the spectrum is split up. You go from the blue up to the red. And is everybody familiar with the disco effect? It's if you have a multi-point light source, especially with LEDs, you get the different colored shimmer on the tank, and people don't like it. I don't particularly care for it, but it's something that does occur in nature. Now, if you want to get away from the disco effect, use a point source lighting, such as metal halide lamps or some of the puck LEDs. Two of the puck LEDs that I'm familiar with is the Noah Psyche, and the other one being the Kessels. So that they will give you, you can get away from that disco effect. Yes.
So what type of lights is it that cause the disco effect? Which lights cause that?
Cause the disco? It's LED lights that have individual colors. You can look at them. There'll be the blue and then a red one and maybe a white one. Yeah, that causes the disco effect. And
Does it hurt anything, or is it just?
well, it's natural. I've never really studied if it hurts anything, but the disco effect is natural in nature, and certainly if you just get the white shimmer in the tank, you're going to be okay. Are you stretching, or is that a question?
So that's not like back in the day with metal halides. We always talked about the cool shimmer. That's not what you're talking about. You're talking about a disco, not a shimmer. This is different.
Right. There's a difference. The disco effect, you're going to see multicolored spots, and with the shimmer, which only the metal halides or puck LEDs can make, that's generally seen as just white light. Now, I don't think you're going to get this spectrum shift in aquarium simply because the waves probably aren't too high, but those different colored lights can give you that disco effect. Is everybody with me so far? I'm mainly looking over to this side of the room because they're asking questions. So if anybody has a question, just holler hey and let me know. And is everybody with me so far?
Yes.
Okay. Next. Now, water motion can change your coral growth morphology. And here on the left, we have a Pacillopora meandrina. These are very common in Hawaii. They live mostly on the upper reef crest and reef flats where the waves crash in and create a lot of water motion. And on the other hand, you've got a Pacillopora Damicornis or Damicorus, however you want to pronounce it. They tend to be in protected areas like lagoons or tide pools. Now, this coral is a meandrina chip that I got, and I took over to the Natural Energy lab to grow out, and it didn't have as much water motion as this coral would have seen in nature. And you can see what happens. I would swear up and down that meandrina was growing the coral growth patterns like in the Pacillopora damicorus. Okay, so there's the water metering device. It operates on Faraday's law. There's a submersible probe that makes a magnetic field, and water motion distorts that magnetic field, and it's translated into water velocity. And as you can see here in this, I think this was taken in an aquarium. It's quite low. It's like a tenth of a foot per second. Okay, next. So why? Another reason water motion is important. We all know that the corals needed to deliver food to them and take the waste away, and nutrient availability, and so on. Now, what happens if you don't have enough flow in the aquarium? There's something called the boundary layer. And if your flow is low, that boundary layer thickens up. And that tends to prevent micronutrients from migrating into the coral itself. So if you increase the water motion, that boundary layer decreases. And you get a much better diffusion of all the elements that the coral needs. Now, it's probably not going to make much difference with something that's high in concentration in an aquarium like calcium or magnesium. But when you start getting into the lower sorts of concentrations, the boundary layer becomes a major issue. And the boundary layer is usually about 1 millimeter thick or so, and a millimeter being about a 25th of an inch. Next. So, I've never seen this discussed, nitrification and water motion. And is everybody familiar with the nitrification process, conversion of ammonia over to nitrite and nitrate?
Yes.
Nitrification usually occurs in a biofilm layer of about 100 microns, which is to let that ammonia, which is going to be in low concentrations, migrate through that boundary layer and get to the film where the nitrification occurs. I've never seen that discussed, but all evidence points that way. I haven't checked it. Yes,
So
ma'am.
does that mean you're actually better to have a sand bed than to go there?
Nitrifying bacteria do not live much in a water column. They tend to colonize sand beds and live rock, that sort of thing. So the more surface area you can give for the nitrifying bacteria to colonize, the better off you're going to be. So a sand bed's not absolutely necessary, but you should have something that presents a lot of surface area, especially if you've got a high fish load in it where the ammonia, concentration could be potentially high. Grace, stop it.
Sorry. I just want to be clear. Did you say you're on Team Sandbed?
I'm sorry.
Did you say no?
Okay.
I just moved over like
Okay.
old bacteria.
Excuse me, sounds like bacteria will die off.
I have, well,
I mean, especially that big of a spike. But
yeah, I have. I've only got like 20 pounds of live rock in the tank, and before I added the Marco rock, the ammonia was going down.
Yeah.
I put the rock in, and it was 25. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was hoping somebody would have an idea, but you have a question?
Yeah, I was reading recently about the biofilm and the nitrification, like on the rocks, and it had mentioned that like if you change your flow or you change the rocks and where they are in the tank, there's going to be like a biofilm die off and it has to reestablish.
Yeah.
Could you speak on that?
Okay. Was that Hovanek? Was that one
I
at
don't
Dr.
remember.
Dr.
It
Tim?
was recently in the Coral magazine, this last issue.
Okay, I haven't opened that one up yet. I've been pretty busy lately. I'll take a look, but that kind of confirms what I was thinking, that that nitrifying film does
Yeah.
need flow to keep things busy. Okay, well, I'm glad to
I
hear
have
that.
the magazine in the car. I can bring it in once we finish.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. I'd like to see it, or at least show me
We
the
didn't drive
cover.
that car. Never mind. We drove the other car.
Okay, I'll look through. I get Coral magazine, so I'll take a look and look it up. Well, thank you for bringing that up. Okay, there are various ways that you can create water motion. We used air stones and subsand filters and things like that, and then some of the little especially the marine land pumps came along, and they were certainly an improvement. And then the fellow that decided he was going to modify some of the maxi jets and put a propeller in it, that was a revolution in water motion. I've had these over the years. They've been highly reliable. If you've got a small tank, like maybe a 40, maybe even a 55, a couple of these things will create enough water motion. I have no issues with these. They're inexpensive, they're reliable. It's a measure of the carbonates in the water. And in terrestrial or land plants, it's carbon dioxide that acts as the carbon source in photosynthesis. Now, photosynthesis produces simple sugars and some amino acids, and you've got to have that carbon source. So in land plants, it's carbon dioxide. Now, in aquatic environments, it's you have to have the alkalinity is going to be your carbon source, and we're going to tie all this together in a few minutes. So the question is how much alkalinity is enough? We'll discuss that in just a minute. Also, it's going the elevated anything above 7 DKH, Grace, or 120 milligrams. That's a natural level. If you start going too much over there, probably anything above 9 or so, you may have some problems. Now, high values are possibly dangerous. We'll discuss that in just a moment. And of course, alkalinity and pH go hand in hand. And if you want to experiment with this and you want to run a high alkalinity, get a red coral and see if the coloration increases. It can in some cases, not all, but some. Okay, is everybody with me on alkalinity, why that's important and what it is? Okay, next. All right, here we go. We're going to start tying all this together. This involved, oh, how many instruments was this? The water velocity meter, uses the water velocity meter, and the fluorometer, which is the photosynthesis meter. And I varied the flow and measured the alkalinity and then measured the rate of photosynthesis. Here at 50 milligrams of the carbonate, which is about a 4 DKH, you're going to have a low pH at that. But look, this is the rate of photosynthesis. It's basically the same, maybe 58, 62, something like that, the rate of photosynthesis. Now we go up to the normal level, 7 DKH, or about 120 milligrams carbonate, and the water velocity here is 1.9 inches per second, and here it is at 3.9. As you see, we start to get a big spread here. Now, bump that up, the alkalinity up to about a 12 DKH or about 200. There is a vast difference between the rate of photosynthesis if you've got really good flow. Now, do you want to run a 12 DKH? We'll answer that in just a moment. But the carry-home message here is water flow can influence the uptake of the alkalinity through the boundary layer and get it available to the coral, not only for coral skeletal growth, but for the carbon source for photosynthesis. Okay, everybody with me? Okay, good. Next. Now, this is the reason you probably do not want to run an elevated alkalinity level. As you probably know, there's something called tip burn when you run a high alkalinity. And I think what happens is when you run that high alkalinity and you've got good water motion, the coral has natural defenses against products that photosynthesis produces that are harmful to the tissues. And those things are oxygen radicals and hydrogen peroxide. So I think what happens is when you jack that alkalinity up really high, you've got good water motion and good light, the coral simply it's an unnatural environment as far as alkalinity goes, and the natural defenses cannot cope with that unnatural environment, and you get the tip burn. That's the theory. There's a way to check it. There's a chemical called TPTZ that can measure certain elements in the process, and there's no way in hell I'm going to do that. I got better ways to spend my time, so I'm going to speculate on it. Okay, everybody with me? Jewel, you haven't gone to sleep yet? Why not? Next. Okay, lighting, friend or foe? Now, here's an example of what you'll get the disco effect with when you've got the multiple multicolored lights. It happens in nature if you got, wave action and that sort of thing. I don't think that plays a major difference in how, I don't think it's going to adversely affect the coral. Okay, so it's lighting, friend or foe. Next, please. Okay, I think most people are familiar with this. It's a quantum meter or par meter, and it measures light intensity in units of micromole photosynthetic photons per square meter per second. So you don't need to know that. All you need to know is the number. Is it too much or too little? If you're going to get some of these, there's some cheap ones on the market. The one I originally bought, Apogee Instruments had not introduced their inexpensive quantum meters until the very late 90s. I bought one in 95 from Lycor out in Nebraska. It's they call it a lab grade. That thing was $1,600 way back when. I've used that to measure against the Apogee inexpensive instrument, and they're roughly the same. So if you're going to do hardcore research and need to do research 40 feet down below the surface of water, you know, get the Lycor. If you're a hobbyist like me, you know, spend $400 or $500 on a quantum meter. Yes, ma'am.
Parwise.
I'm sorry.
The Parwise. Are you familiar with it?
Is that the Senai?
No.
Yes,
I had the
it's-
Senai first, and then Parwise is different though.
But it's from the
Parwise.
same
It's the
company.
same
Is it?
company.
I
Yeah, it's the
didn't
same
know that.
company. Yeah,
Okay.
it's the same company.
Okay, so
It's within 2%. I mean, it's so close that it's margin of error.
Yeah.
okay. Now,
I mean,
that's
Parwise? Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that.
that's the one that measures spectrum and all that
yeah,
stuff
it does
combined.
the spectrum. It has the
Yeah,
spectrum
okay,
analysis
okay.
and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's right.
Senai sent me one of those to test, and I haven't even opened the box.
It was like
yet.
2 or 3% for my 510.
Okay.
So that's margin of error, right? Flow
yeah.
can,
Yeah.
you know, a number changing 5 points is not going to make or break anything.
That's right.
You know, so
When I talked to Senai, the sensor is not cosine corrected.
Yeah.
So you got to make sure it's pointed straight up.
Straight up,
But
yep.
other than that, you
Yeah.
should be fine.
yeah.
Okay, I see people yawning, so let's get through this. I'm surprised I haven't gone to sleep yet. Okay, next. Okay, this is what bedevils us, the Symbiodinium zooxanthellae. Years ago, they thought that there was just one species. Now we know there's at least 9 species with clades and subclades, so we're up to, you know, a couple of hundred. Some of them prefer light, some of them don't. It's like when you go to Home Depot or Lowe's, you go to their nursery for land plants. They're going to have some that say shade, partial sun, full sun. Zooxanthellae are like that too, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But healthy zooxanthellae contain chlorophylls, 2 types, and other photopigments. So, next please, ma'am. Okay, in the late 1990s, it was thought that more light was better. And let me think of the name of the company. SpectraPure. I think they're in Arizona. They do RO units.
Yeah, spectrum.
Yeah, that guy sent me this light and wanted me to test it. It's a sulfur lamp. And you can see this globe right here. It's full of sulfur, and it's bombarded with microwaves. And it excites the sulfur to create a rather ugly spectrum. This thing gets so hot that this lamp has to be rotated to keep from melting. So I checked it with the Lycor meter. You know, the most I had ever checked, you know, with sunlight, I was getting like maybe 2,100 micromole. This thing produced over 20,000 par. It pegged the meter out, and it's completely ridiculous. These never found a market, thank God.
Yeah.
So anyway, in the 90s, you know, they sent me this and said, here, you know, we think this is work. Corals need all the light they can get. Well, that's wrong. So let's look at the next slide. Here is a prime example. See, this coral is fully exposed to sunlight. It survives just fine. So there. Anything you say about corals can't handle too much light, you know, they tell me I'm wrong. Well, let them go out and spend $3,500 on a PAM fluorometer, and I'll be glad to talk to them. The rest of it's just opinion. Now, how do these corals survive? Here on the tips, there's not going to be a whole lot of zooxanthellae. Here in the crevices is where most of the zooxanthellae is going to live. And you got to remember, in an aquarium, the light is pretty much up and down, you know, maybe a little bit from the side, but the angle of light is not going to change through the day like it does in sunlight where you have that arc. So in the morning, this part of the, you know, coral is going to be getting light. This is shaded, so they're not exposed for 12 hours to direct light like we see in an aquarium. And as Charles Delbeek says, the ocean is not an aquarium, the aquarium is not an ocean. So it's really hard to compare the two. So there, people say corals can take all the light you can give them. Next, please. To test this was my favorite tide pool in Hawaii. It is full of Parietes, Pacilloporas, and various corals. Beautiful place. This is either at Kahalu Beach Park or this tide pool is where I did most of the work when I was there if I was going to do field work. Next, please. So here we go. We said we would discuss this a little more. It's the PAM fluorometer. It's got a fiber optic cable that is right here, and it's about 3 feet long. It's not submersible, but for lab work where you've got a shallow water environment, you can direct the fiber optic toward the object you want to test and get a reading. And the way this works is chlorophyll will fluoresce. If you've ever looked at your aquarium under a black light or maybe strong blue light, you'll see some of the green plants will turn red. That's the chlorophyll fluorescence. And photosynthesis and fluorescence are competing processes. When photosynthesis is low, the fluorescence is going to be high, and vice versa. So this is able to determine the amount of fluorescence, and if you combine that with a PAR reading, the amount of light, you can come up with something that's called the electron transport rate through the coral. And we'll just go back, it's a photosynthesis meter. You don't need to know the rest of that stuff. It'll give us a number, and we'll look at those in just a minute. Next, please. Okay, a couple of definitions, or several definitions we need to know. There's saturation point of photosynthesis. It's where a plant, coral, clam, whatever, where increasing the amount of light will not increase the rate of photosynthesis. In other words, it's like an engine in a car. You've got it 3/4 throttle. If you go through full throttle, you're probably not going to get much more out of it, right? So, yeah, just think of photosynthesis as a motor. It's got a maximum amount, and if you go over the red line, you're going to have some problems. Now, to counteract something called dynamic photoinhibition, internal protective pigments collect blue light and shunt that away from the photosynthetic process, and they're called xanthophylls. Plants, terrestrial plants have those too. In the fall, when the chlorophyll dies in the leaves and you see the fall colors of red, orange, yellow, whatever, those are the xanthophylls. Those are protective pigments that only appear when the chlorophyll dies. Then there's chronic photoinhibition. If you give that thing too much light, it starts to overwhelm the natural defenses, and it causes photo damage, and the coral will expend its energy to repair, or the zooxanthellae will expend their energy for repair. So it's really important, don't give them too much light. So how much is too much light? Next, please. Okay, this is what the fluorometer tells us. There, you start off at 0, and you got 0 photosynthesis here. And you increase the amount of light every 20 minutes, and you get various data points, and then you get the hyperbolic line here. So here's how you determine the saturation point. You go to the maximum rate of photosynthesis, draw a tangent through the initial slope, and where those connect, bring it down. In this case, the saturation point would be 400. Is everybody with me? Okay. I try not to get too technical on this, but I need to explain how it's done and what it means. So if everybody's with me, next slide, please. Okay, now, some of these slides I pulled out of articles I wrote for years ago. The PI is a photosynthesis irradiance curve, but it's the rate of photosynthesis just the same. So this is one of the Pocillopora, which is a fairly common coral in aquariums. At zero light, you've got zero photosynthesis. So we plot this out, the various points, and then we find out the best fit for all those data points. So here, the rate of maximum photosynthesis is about 82, 83. We draw the line up this way, come down, and wait a minute, let me go back here. This is it looks like, I've got some direct numbers, but this is going to be about 200. That's the maximum amount of light that they can handle, and that's going to be the tips. Now remember, the shaded portions, you can give them more light. Next, please. And here's one that I collected. Actually, both of those were collected legally out of a tide pool. You see, this is different. The maximum rate of photosynthesis is going to be the onset of saturation is going to be about 400 micromole. Next, please. Now, this was done in situ in one of the tide pools. This is what I found. If maximum photosynthesis is reached at about 400 micromole light, that is achieved at 9 a.m. After that, the coral starts to shut down. The protective pigments kick in and start to protect that thing from too much light. Now in the afternoon, when the light levels start to drop, the xanthophylls quit doing their work and the rate of photosynthesis can continue. Okay, everybody with me? It's just the rate of photosynthesis is dependent on light, and it's basically an upside down U with no photosynthesis, maximum, and then, yes ma'am.
I'm just curious, I want to make sure I understand something. Does that mean if its max is reached at 9 a.m. and it shuts down, so any growth for that coral happens before 9 a.m. and then doesn't start, if it was growing, it wouldn't grow until it...
Yeah, actually what happens is the rate of photosynthesis starts to drop.
And then come back.
And then come back. So what happens is, since this is a curve, you're going to get a maximum rate of photosynthesis in the morning, and then sometime around 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that rate of photosynthesis is going to return. It's only during the period between like 9 and 3 where you're going to have so much light that the coral can't handle it. Okay, I mean, it can handle it, but you'd be better off, instead of giving it like, 1,200 micromole at noon, you'll be better off just giving it, at this point, 300 micromole all day long.
Right.
That way you can maximize growth.
Okay.
Okay, everybody with me? Any questions?
I got one question for you.
Yes, sir.
Now, so is the rate of photosynthesis static or steady across that par level? So if I kept 400 par over that coral for an extended period of time, is that photosynthesis level going to stay the same, or is there going to be any drop in that?
Yeah, it's as long as you don't exceed by much the saturation point, you're going to get good growth out of it. But if you go higher than that, you might damage the coral. Rate of photosynthesis is going to drop. Growth is going to, if we can equate photosynthesis with skeletal growth, and I think there's a good case we can. So yeah, instead of playing around with some of these lights and blasting them with light at noon, actually you'd be better off just having a steady light over not to exceed in this case 300 or 400 micromole for 12 hours. Don't illuminate them for 24 hours. That's not a good idea. It interrupts meiosis and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, yeah, you're better off just having, in my opinion. Okay, somebody scratching their head or they got a question?
Question first.
I'm sorry.
I was going to ask if you're familiar with the bolus method and if that ties in to kind of what you found with the photosynthesis.
Was that the Balling method?
Bolus, it's like BOLUS. And
Bolus.
It's where they believe in dosing a single dose of alkalinity, like your daily dose, that what you would dose for alkalinity for the day. You do it in the morning, a certain time before lights come on, before the photosynthesis and everything kicks up.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know if you were familiar with the method and if that's kind of what they're thinking with this.
Fauna Marine.
Yeah,
Fauna Marine.
Oh, Fauna Marine. Yeah. I thought that they used the Balling method, where they introduced alkalinity over the course of a day, or if you've got an apex controller where it's able to control it. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing a single dose of alkalinity as long as your alkalinity doesn't shoot off the chart.
Yeah, because they talk about just like you have to figure out what your tank needs, like obviously what it takes up, and you also have to keep it in parameter with your calcium, your magnesium, and what you're dosing there. Those have to be good before you're doing the bolus method.
Okay.
Because that was in that same Coral magazine.
Okay.
I haven't
Yeah.
read it, but hearing this, it makes sense.
Let me look that over. I'm not familiar with that. It sounds just off the top of my head, it's not going to hurt anything. But on the other hand, if you're not really careful, you could overdose the alkalinity and it could cause some problems.
Yeah.
Yes, Grace.
Sorry. Are you saying, I wasn't clear on whether you were voting for that or not. Are you saying that we should be putting up our light in the morning and then putting it down and then putting it up again? Because that's not the way we were doing it inside for the past 20 years. So
No.
we ramp it up until we go to the highest point in the day, just like the sun does, and then we come back down. I can't change the greenhouse because the sun is what it is, but are you saying that inside, like indoor lighting, we should do that? We should not do that? What do you think?
As long as you know the saturation point of the coral.
If we're doing this, then
when I used the sky lights for a while and I was able to control the intensity. So yeah, I ramped the lights up and down. The big thing is to avoid oversaturation of photosynthesis. Okay, I don't think.
We don't want to do it at all. We should not. We should try to get just under that where they shut down and don't. Yeah. Okay. Just.
You can do whatever you want. They're.
I'm asking you what you think. I can do whatever I want, but I'm asking you what do you do?
Personally, on this tank, I'm going to run the light. I'm going to look at the corals I've got and probably keep the par about 250 at the bottom of the tank, and then put some of the corals that can take the shading time to figure out which one's really best. Personally, I was in Hawaii and had my little lab for 18 years. I really don't want to do that anymore, Okay.
You keep telling me that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
gotta ask a question and to follow up on. Sorry. And you said 250 at the bottom. You're talking SPS, right? Is that what you said at the beginning, that you were focusing mostly on SPS?
Yeah, the thing with soft corals, for the most part, is they're not static. If you got enough water flow, they're going to bend, or the polyp stalks are going to bend. They do the self-shading, just like a stony coral can, but they're much more adaptable to a water flow than the stony ones where they have a fixed geometry. 250 should work for anything. If you got a sarcophyton or nephthia or whatever.
So even the LPS that are, any of it, 250 at the bottom would be okay.
You could and we'll look at some saturation points on corals in just a minute. 250 is just a recommended number. Some corals you can go lower than that, and that's just something you really need to observe your aquarium and determine does it look like the coral's doing well? Is it not doing well? You may need to move it, but that's where the observation of the tank comes into play.
So bolus, I looked it up real quick. It is it's the balling method. It's just fauna's balling method prescribed, I guess, in a sense.
Like
in a total.
a different type.
It's their version of balling, basically, is what it looks like. Like I said, that's a quick search, but bolus is there. It's Fauna Marin's in partnership with someone else to come up with their method.
Yeah, and it is also specifically for SBS, they said.
Okay.
Like,
I'll look into that. I've got a little bit of opinion, but it's just off the top of my
I just
head.
read on it, and that just made me think back to that, because I was kind of like, oh, you're setting the tank up with its parameters where it should be before all the action happens. Whereas like we normally dose out at night to help with pH, but
Okay.
thinking the opposite way was interesting.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. If
Yeah.
if you're going to dose, do it at night to maintain the pH. But
Yeah.
you can do that with reverse daylight photosynthesis too. So there are a number of ways to stabilize that pH at night.
Yeah.
Did that answer the question, or did it confuse me as much as I have you?
That's good. I just wondered what you knew about it.
Oh, okay. Next slide, please. Okay, here we go. Saturation points of various stony corals. There has been very little work done with soft corals. What I do not have in here is tridacna clams. I did an experiment and looked at the rate of photosynthesis, and this was a tridacna dorasa, one of the lower light tridacnas. I was able to get the light intensity up to 900, saw absolutely no sign of photo inhibition. So I found online a master's thesis. He went up to, I think it was 1600, and didn't see any. So give clams as much light as you can. Now, you may want to move them a little bit and adapt them. I don't think I would go from, 0 to 60, just like that. Okay, now, some of this is from scientific literature. Some of it is what I did. All my stuff was, back when Craig Bingman was doing the peer review, it was peer reviewed, and he quit doing that after a while. But you can see here's an Acrophora divaricata, and the saturation point is 75. On the other end, here's Parates lutea, which is pretty similar to a Parates lobata. Saturation point is about 350. So you can see some corals are shade plants, some corals are light plants. So this pretty much tells you that, we definitely see a trend here. Most the highest saturation point we've seen was at 350, and often it's much, much less than that. So to say, here's an exposed coral in Australia at noon on a sunny day during the summer, and it's taking all the light it can get, that coral is having some real problems. And we're going to see that in just a second. Okay, next please. Okay, the OptiScience chlorophyll meter. We know what chlorophyll is. We know what xanthella has in it. And this meter is able to measure the chlorophyll content down to about 40 milligrams per liter, square meter. Anything less than that, the meter gets kind of funky, but it's very good about measuring a lot of chlorophyll. And it does it with blue light and fluorescence and all that kind of, I mean, it's magic, really. I won't try to explain it because I'm not sure I understand it myself. Okay, so here's what I found with the chlorophyll meter. Next, please. Yours truly, with this meter, took it out to my favorite tide pool, and I'm measuring the chlorophyll content in some of the corals. This especially came in handy. In 2015, we had a major bleaching event in Hawaii, and before anybody jumps on the global warming bandwagon, that had nothing to do with it. There was an area of high pressure in the Pacific, and what happened is when you had that dome of high pressure, there was no wind and no wave action, and that allowed the very top of the water column to become warm, and it was too warm for a lot of the corals. So now I'm not, if you think global warming's a thing, that's your opinion, but don't. I actually had this published, what I found in the local newspaper, and I was just bombarded with global warming this and global warming that, and it had nothing to do with it. So, when you read something like this, be careful. Somebody is trying to promote an agenda. So, okay, yes, ma'am.
Similar to what happened with the Keys about 2 years ago.
Uh-huh.
Because we were down there when it started happening with the Keys, and the water was like over 90 degrees. There was no wind. And everybody on the East Coast just thought it was just the neatest thing, because we were getting all this clean water like you see in the Keys all the way up the East Coast. What they didn't understand was it came at a price, because that's when they were, they were going into down in the Keys trying to rescue coral and taking it to like the Georgia Aquarium.
Uh-huh.
To try to make sure that they still had this coral when this went through. They lost a lot of coral reef here and so. Yeah,
what you're talking about was a weather event,
Yeah,
not
it
a
was.
climate event, and that's what this was. It wasn't climate, it was a weather phenomenon, which fortunately doesn't happen very often. But I didn't bring any pictures of bleached corals in this tide pool. This was done as they started to recover, and almost all of them did, which was a really good thing. So that's how I spent my days in Hawaii, day on the beach, right? Next slide, please. Okay, here's what I found. Can corals take too much light? This was a chip of a Parates lobata collected out of a tide pool. On the shaded side, as you can see, there's a lot of chlorophyll. Around, I guess on average, probably a little bit over 200 milligrams of chlorophyll per square meter. Now, on the side exposed to the light, although, and this is something I need to mention, that just because the coral doesn't look like it's bleached doesn't mean it isn't. Now, when they turn snow white, when you have a severe case of bleaching, yeah, they're going to turn white, but a coral can be bleached and still appear a little bit brown. And it's kind of hard to see, but it's a little bit darker on the shaded side than it is on the lighted side. So this happened in a parietes. It's going to happen in an acropora on the shaded parts of the branches, any branching coral. That's where most of your zooxanthellae are going to be, all right? And on the exposed side, you're not going to have a lot. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, next slide. I'm going to wrap it up before everybody falls asleep. Water flow, alkalinity, and light intensity should not be treated as separate entities. They are all interrelated. Alkalinity is the carbon source for photosynthesis in aquatic environments. Water flow increases the uptake of alkalinity and micronutrients or micrometals. Avoid extreme alkalinity levels. I wouldn't go any over 9. If you're keeping corals with the DKH over 9, God bless you. I wish you a lot of luck. Many corals do not require much light. Too much can be harmful. You can actually toast them. And something we really didn't discuss, but if you have a major upset in your aquarium and your alkalinity spikes, be on the lookout. That could be a harbinger of bad things to come.
As it spikes upward or downward?
Upwards would be the worst case. For the alkalinity to drop, there would have to be something that would burn up that alkalinity, and you'll probably see it in pH as well. So I think something like that might be an overdose of some sort of additive, or I right offhand I can't think of anything that would cause a strong alkalinity drop. Does anybody have any questions? We are just about to wrap it up. Yes, Grace.
Anyone but Grace. Okay. Well, only one more. Do you think there's any relationship between high alkalinity and nutrients, or just no high alkalinity?
Put that in layman's terms so I understand.
I'm just going to make it clear because I'm squirrel. I have run my alkalinity back when I had high nutrients. I would run my alkalinity 10. Wouldn't be weird for me at 12. There's another local store back in Raleigh, 14. I know, you're just getting crawled. But the difference seems to be that these tanks had nutrients. These tanks had higher phosphates. These tanks had higher nitrates.
Okay.
So these tanks had nutrients. But it seems to me, just saying, kind of seemed like I found out a couple times, once you get rid of those nutrients and you start having lower nutrient tanks, like you start having, lower phosphate levels, 0.03. I never had nitrate, but, lower nutrients. Now, you don't want the higher alkalinity for sure. It does do exactly what you say. So do you think, did you ever think there was a relationship between that?
Well, my only thought is that the nitrogen and phosphorus, and we don't worry about potassium because there's so much in the water, that would obviously act as a fertilizer to the zooxanthellae. And, it may get to the point where there are so many zooxanthellae growing that the alkalinity demand could be there, and maybe that's necessary. I haven't studied that.
Though, does it? Not like calcium being higher. It doesn't have any benefit.
Well, that the nutrient levels, some people say run phosphorus or phosphate at 0. Others say it doesn't matter.
Oh, I would not say that.
Yeah, well,
everything died. I wouldn't say that.
The thing is there to remember Liebig's law of the minimum. Photosynthesis is like a chain, and if you take one link out, photosynthesis is going to stop. It's going to stop. if there's a vital nutrient needed and it's not available, it doesn't matter what your phosphate and nitrogen content is. If you don't have zero phosphorus in their water, photosynthesis is not going to occur. And that's the reason in wastewater treatment plants to limit algae growth in the rivers when the treated wastewater is released, that they use iron salts to remove the phosphorus, so the algae growth is greatly, they don't get it down to zero, they get it low or to limit the algae growth. So, you know, it works both ways. Maybe elevated nutrients work, but nothing is going to work if any one of the necessary elements is left out.
Right.
Does that answer?
Those days are over. I don't have like one phosphate anymore. I don't keep my alkalinity that high. I'm down to like 8. Good.
Yeah.
It's like, hey,
Good.
it's fine.
All right. Any more questions? Okay, either you fully understood everything I said or I've totally confused you, and I hope it's the first. I always enjoy speaking to the club. Thank you very much for inviting us.